Well, hello and welcome to the Wine Access Unfiltered podcast. It's no secret that as far as this podcast is concerned, all roads always lead back to Napa Valley. And while I wasn't born here, after having lived in Napa for about 8 years now, Napa has very much become my second home. It has become the place that I have grown personally and professionally, and I've built my life here. But in over 50 episodes, this is the very first time that we are making Napa the topic of conversation, which I'm so excited about because there's so much to unpack about this place. A lot of things that people don't know about Napa Valley. And I think one of those things is that as much as Napa Valley is an extraordinary place to visit and, of course, to make wine, what makes it truly special is the people. And this place is filled with farmers and winemakers, entrepreneurs, dreamers, and people from all walks of life and backgrounds. And it literally never ceases to amaze me who I get to interact with from day to day here. So, this podcast will be a little bit of a love letter to this place, complete with all the things that we love, all the things that we think you'll love when you're visiting, but I couldn't be more excited to do it with a fellow dreamer, someone who has made her dreams a reality many, many times over. She's a polymath and an entrepreneur with a multi-decade career as a professional race car driver. She's been named the Times 100 Most Influential People list. She's been in 2 Sports Illustrated swimsuit issues, which is 2 more than me. It's okay. She's appeared in a record-setting 14 Super Bowl commercials, and the reason that she's here with me today, the owner and sole proprietor of Somnium, a premium Napa Valley wine brand and vineyard. These wines have continuously impressed me over the years, and I am so excited after getting to DM with her a little bit on Instagram that we're finally getting to have a full-blown conversation today with you about one of my favorite places. Please welcome to the show, Danica Patrick. How you doing?
Cheers,
Cheers.
cheers. Well, here's to that. And, I stop myself sometimes and I think, I'm working,
Mhm.
but I'm drinking,
Mhm.
but I'm drinking.
You're
Like,
drinking.
that gets to be my work now. The first thing I did after I retired in 2018 was go out to auction Napa Valley.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
it was literally like days later, I headed out there and I was like, drinking and driving is so bad, but now drinking is my job. Cheers.
I had never considered that those 2 things are not, usually things that we like to put together, but, yeah.
Yeah.
But you're doing it, and you're doing it well. My mom says hello, by the way, she's a fan, so which I
Aw.
think is kind of funny because she's not into race car driving at all, but she loves you, and I wonder, is that's like a thing though for you though, right? Is there a lot of people who are fans of you who are not into race car driving that just, like, love your spirit and your
Uh,
energy? Because you do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think it's a little bit because I just transcended past the sport a little bit,
Mhm.
as a girl doing something in a man's world
Yeah.
and breaking into that, like that sort of that represents so many people trying to break down their own barriers. So that really transcends beyond the sport.
Well, you're in 2 male-dominated industries, right? So you were in race
Yeah.
car driving, and now you're in wine, which maybe we'll dive into into what that looks
Yeah,
like
for sure.
later,
Yeah.
but
I mean, wine, speaking engagements, speaking gigs, there's not very many guys that do
mm,
those. Race broadcasting. I mean, I do 10 races now, 7 F1, 2 IndyCar, 2 in NASCAR and 1 IndyCar. And I mean, there's obviously not that many of those. So I kind of have remained in that field. But I mean, the name Somnium, which is the name of my wine, it means dream in Latin.
mm.
So it was, truly, it was a trip I took back in 2006 to the Valley and went to Quintessa. And for those who are familiar, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners are, it's on the Valley floor. It's the huge, huge property. It's, I think if I remember correctly, it was maybe 250 acres or something.
Yeah.
And they have like a big knoll in the middle of the property. And
Mhm.
so, I just went up there one foggy November morning, waiting for the fog to pull back down into San Fran and dissipate, and drinking wine at 10 a.m. after going to French Laundry for the first time the night
That's
before.
right. It's the
And,
Napa way.
and I was just like, not sure I'd be ready. I was like, how the hell am I going to be ready to drink like at 10 a.m.? But there's magic in the valley and you're ready. So I just stood there and I just swirled my wine and looked over the valley and thought to myself in my head that it would be so cool to have something like this someday. And here we are.
Here we are, and I think you're not alone. I think a lot of people have come to Napa Valley and gone to beautiful vineyards, swirled their glass, looked around and gone like, "Wow, wouldn't it be cool to like, you know, make wine here, like live here, like come here all the time?"
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I've been very fortunate to be a pretty good manifester of the things that I'm interested in, want, and to the point where I have to be a little careful how interested I am in something because the ball gets rolling pretty fast. So between the time that I thought that in 2006, that was November, I ended up seeing the property that I ended up buying. I saw the property December of 2008.
Mm,
So about 2 years later, I saw the property, and it was really just like a literally like an inner monologue idea in my head. And at the time, wasn't even going to the valley regularly.
yeah.
I probably went back to the valley for a race the next year in 2007, and then it was probably like fall of 2008 that I started actually looking.
Mm.
So again, things just go really fast. Now it takes a hell of a long time to like make your bottle of wine, and like there wasn't a bottle ready to be sold until 2017, but
Jesus.
it's definitely, if you have time, you can do it a little bit slower, and you don't have to have your tens of millions of dollars up front to buy something already established. You can start slow, but slow it is.
Slow it is, which is not usually your speed, but in the valley.
No, I've realized that. I do everything fast. Everything. I had no idea. And I say this and you're like, that sounds stupid, Danica. Like, how did you not know? But I didn't. Like I think that my life was just such a way that it suited
Yeah.
it, and everything was about doing it fast.
I moved here from New York, and so getting used to the Napa lifestyle here, which is significantly slower because it has to be, right? We're at the mercy of Mother
Yeah.
Nature.
Yeah.
Wine is a slow sport, not a fast sport. It takes a long time to make wine, and you have to be patient. But it's astounded me how similar New York and Napa are in so many ways. Like this place is just filled with, like, as I said, like entrepreneurs and dreamers, and you don't have the concrete jungle of New York, but you do have a lot of people who are very smart, business men and women who come from all different backgrounds and have done amazing things, and you just never know who you're going to be talking to here.
There's a lot of money. I
A
mean, there's
lot of
gotta be similar. There's a lot of money in New York, and there's a lot of money
exactly.
in the Valley.
It's stealthier here for
I'm one of the
sure.
poorer ones probably.
Listen, I'm in like a 300 square foot cottage because this is what I can afford here, but, we make it work. We make it look like it's a lavish life,
All
um,
right.
which is the name of the game if you're in Napa Valley because it's all lavish here. It's all expensive. Everybody drinks
Fancy
wine.
farming. That's what
Fancy
I call it.
fancy
Fancy farming. And this is my currency.
Yes,
I
the
mean, that's
wine.
true. I mean, like, just being in the valley and just, knowing that you can, having spent so much time there over the years. I used to go there a little bit more often for trips. I still go there a couple times a year, but a lot more of my work ends up being like wine dinners on the road and charity events and different
Mhm,
things. And just people were literally using their wine, using olive oil, using cheese, using
mhm.
beer. Like, for those who don't know, a lot of winemakers in the valley, they love their
We
beer,
love beer.
and people just using that as currency. And so I think it actually planted a pretty good seed for me to take that into regular life. Like,
Yeah.
this gifts, this is thank yous for people that do things for me. It's a currency for me.
There was 2 articles that I wanted to touch on before we got into the meat and potatoes of the podcast. One of them is there are these 2 wineries that are joining this lawsuit, accusing Napa County of unconstitutional patterns and practices, and I don't know if you're familiar with Hoops Winery in Oakville. It was, Lindsay Hoops. She's second or third generation, I'm forgetting which. But anyway, she filed a lawsuit against the county because they were being so restrictive as to, what she can and can't do, and to the point where it is allegedly unconstitutional. And so 2 more wineries, Smith Madrone and then, another one called, something Summit Lake, they're joining this huge lawsuit. But I mean, if you wanna read the lawsuit, of course, I'll link it below, but the point is, this lawsuit is sort of representative of, and we love Napa, of course, but it's sort of representative of, like, all of the restrictions that are here in this county and like what you can and can't do. And other regions don't necessarily have things like that. So one of the things that I always have to explain to people when they're visiting Napa Valley is like, gone are the days of you just walking up to a winery and, like, going and tasting because the county literally restricts, like, how many people that they can see per day or per week.
Yeah.
They restrict,
Yeah.
like, whether or not you can serve
Yeah.
food. Like, you
Yeah.
can't just open a hotel. You can't just have people stay at your place and do certain types of hospitality. Like, there's a lot of county regulations, and so I think one of the things that has I think there's good and bad to all of this, right? But I think one of, the detriments to Napa Valley is the fact that we haven't been able to do the things that I've seen in some of these other wine regions like Mendoza and in Tuscany that can do these very like all-encompassing experiences with food and with hospitality, with hotel stays, being able to stay on the vineyard. And I'm sure being a business owner and winery owner in Napa Valley, you've probably experienced a handful of things that that Napa's thrown at you in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, well, I went through a lot of those processes kind of early on, buying the property, getting it sort of permitted, erosion control, like
Mhm.
special species of plants,
Was it
natural
was it
artifacts.
planted when you bought it, or was it just a piece of
No.
land? So you developed the whole thing?
Yeah, so it was,
Wow.
there was a road, there was a road that went up to the top. It was an older man, 80 some years old, that owned it. I think his daughter was representing him.
Mm,
There was some stakes up on the top of the property to put some small structure up there. But then the fire of it would have been then 2007, 6, 7 ish.
mm,
There was a fire,
yeah.
maybe even as late as 8 that came through. And everyone was pissed at the property because it was too steep for the water trucks to get to the top because it's very slow, very steep. Have you been there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's super steep. I remember, like, my Range Rover
Very
had a tough
steep.
time.
There was a gate though at the bottom. This was always my secret hope for the AVA in that region was that
Mhm.
the AVA could be called Cougar Ridge
Mm.
because the gate had a cougar, like cougar right in the middle, and it said Cougar Ridge across the
Oh,
top.
that's cool.
Still there. And I was like, man, it'd be so cool. We'd obviously have to make Chardonnay, but
Mm.
because of cougars,
Cougar
you
no,
know.
of course.
But it just had a gate at the bottom, but other than that, it was not there was nothing. And so, yeah, all the vineyard, all the 6-ish acres of vineyard that are planted, and the road around the outside of the north side of the property, and the back side, which would be, I guess, the west side, east side of the property, are put in,
Mhm.
but, yeah, there was nothing there. It was a big feat, a lot of
Wild.
rock, a lot of rock to move, a lot of rock to crush, and all those rocks ended up making the terracing so that we could kind of create, the water dispersion so that when the water came down, then it funneled into these really cool tube systems
Yeah.
where it would disperse it evenly into the next block. So it was a pretty advanced system and worked really well.
Wow. Yeah, well, I think what so you've definitely seen all of the county restrictions and all like,
Yeah,
you jumped through some hoops to make that happen.
yeah, I mean, it took a long time, and then getting, the permits to put a winery in.
Right.
I did get those. It's just that my life took a lot of changes then in the sort of 2012, 13 time. So, it was the cave was designed, big 10,000 square foot cave.
Mm,
The permits were done. There's no turn lane needed to put in. Like there was a lot of things that were really great.
yeah,
It's just, there was just so much capital required.
yeah,
I already am a small boutique winery. I mean, we just don't make that much wine, and so it's just so much capital, and there's already been so much capital put into it
yeah,
that it was like, man. And then especially now having Julian fired as my winemaker.
yeah.
Actually, the way I met Julian was that I went to he went to his cave covert
Mhm.
to go check it out because it was done by the same architect and it was a very, very similar
That cave is
layout and
beautiful, I've
same
been there.
design to what my winery was
Mhm.
going to be. And so I was like, man, let me go check it out. Let me hear what he has to say. And of course, he said, always build it bigger than what you need, what you think you need, which I wanted 5,000 square feet. And this thing was designed to 10. And I was like, shit, I was really hoping you'd say less. But it was beautiful. And then I just really liked him and he's really smart and really had so much such an ability to make so many different kinds of wines
Hmm.
that it really felt like he not only could make what was best for the grape, but also listen to the proprietor and listen to the one that was, driving the creative direction of what kind of wine wanted to be made.
Yeah.
And I was like, he just is a really talented winemaker. So the relationship just grew and ended up making him my winemaker a few years ago. And so I now get the benefit of his facilities to be able to use. So, kind of bridging that gap between just the vineyard and having a winery.
Yeah, I think it's so smart, and I think it's one of those things that people don't realize is the case a lot in Napa, is that a lot of wine brands that people know and love do not make wine at their own facility. They make it at,
Right.
either a custom crush facility or somewhere like
Right.
Covert that, you've got a great winemaker at the helm who's, got some more space and can actually oversee the wines a little bit better that way so that he's not moving from place
Yeah.
to place.
Let's not forget there are a lot of great wines that buy grapes and custom crush.
Yes, a lot of
There are a
them.
lot of wines that buy grapes and custom crush. They
Oh,
don't
yeah.
own anything.
That's true. They don't even own their own vineyard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, it's all available. It just depends on your contracts for what grapes you're able to get and where you make it, who your winemaker
Yeah.
is, and you know, it's all possible.
Mhm.
But we're lucky to have such good grapes on property.
For those of you dreaming of, like, owning a wi like, you can do it. Like, it's definitely possible to have a
Yeah.
wine brand in Napa Valley. Like, there's ways to make great wine without having your own facility. Of course, it always helps to own your own vineyard, because you have control over more things, but
I think it kind of falls under that umbrella of like I've asked so many times, I'm like, what does it matter that's 100% one grape?
mm, it
And it's
doesn't.
not a super clear
It's
answer
not a clear
because
answer.
you can make a phenomenal blend and arguably maybe even better. But it's more about knowing where it came from and then the ability to take one grape like we've just started to bottle Cab Franc for the
Mhm.
first time because it's good enough off the property. Um, but whether it's Cabernet Sauvignon or whether it's Cab Franc or whatever the single varietal is, it's like to be 100% one of them or to be fully estate wine versus purchased grapes, it's kind of just more like a feather in your cap that you've got this property that can make this wine, or you've got this wine that can just be 100% one grape
So
and it
true.
has that much balance in it.
Yeah.
Because that's what the other grapes are used for, is to balance it out. And
Mhm.
so, it really speaks volumes about the winemaker, the vineyard, the grapes, all the things when you can basically take it off the property and make 100% of one grape. It just
Totally.
says, man, freaking nailed. Like this is a special property.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think Napa in a lot of ways uniquely is able to do the single variety wines in the way that like Bordeaux can't. Like Bordeaux blends as an insurance policy. I mean, do it because every single year they have incredibly variable vintages that force them to be able to, blend a little bit more Cabernet Franc in this year. Or like maybe the Merlot didn't ripen the way they thought it would. And so they have to have the ability to play with that. Whereas like somewhere like Napa Valley, if you don't always have to do that. Like sometimes you have really great Cabernet Sauvignon 100% clear across the board, and you can make that
Yeah.
wine. And especially when you have, like, a really good winemaker who can look at different barrels and even blend within that single varietal to make something, like, really unique and special because, you can
Yeah.
have wines that are super one-dimensional, but you can have really incredible wines that are broad and have,
Yeah.
complexities to them that are still single varietal. So
Yeah, and there's also another thing I think that's really special to my property, and other properties have it too, but I just know it for mine is that you know the different blocks on the property and the different exposures they will produce, and when they were harvested, because they're not all exactly harvested at exactly the same time, they can't be, and so that all plays a role in the flavor too.
right,
So you can do that. And then you can take those grapes and you can put them into different barrels, right? Like
right.
what American oak, French oak, medium toast, more toast. Like you can totally adjust for that vineyard based on the barrels too. So there's so many ways to layer in the way to make a nicely balanced wine. But my property has two blocks on the bottom, which the fire of 2020, one for me and one for my homies. Hang on a second.
Pour one out for 2020.
I mean, 2020 was already a mofo, right? Like,
Oh,
it was
man.
already what it was. And I remember getting a call from Tracy, my GM, and she was like sending me pictures of the fire, and I saw where it was coming up, which is like the Hourglass Vineyard,
Mhm.
which of course is why it's called Hourglass because of the shape of the valley
Mhm.
there, which I found out when I finally went. But it was coming up that valley, and I was like, "Oh shit, it's coming."
Yeah.
And woke up in the morning, and she said it's gone, and I was like, and I just sat, and then I finally like got to emotion, and I cried. And I was like, because insurance blows
Yep.
in the valley
Mhm.
for this stuff. So I was like, all right, what am I going to do? I've already dumped so many millions of dollars into this. I'm
Right.
like, do I keep going because I've come this far? Do I cut my losses because that's a guaranteed loss? I'm like, I don't know, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a vertical of every year I've made so far. I'm going to my friend's house and we're going to get hammered tonight. That was my plan.
It's a solid plan when that happens.
I got the phone call hours later and Tracy goes, it's not as bad as we thought. And I was like, okay,
All
what
right.
does that mean? Julian had accessed the property from out around the back side.
Wow.
And it only took out, and I'm getting to the punchline here, it only took out really the bottom two blocks of the property, which were Cabernet Sauvignon. And they were the first two blocks planted back in what would have probably been 13 that they got planted. And so we made about 50 cases from the 13. We never sold 13.
Mm.
Um, and I think we just open it for special occasions and let special people that are on our, mailing list and are very good customers buy and taste it. But the blocks were gone. The rest was okay. The edges were a little toasted,
Yeah.
but we didn't lose the rest of it. And so Julian, knowing that I loved Cab Franc, said, I think we should replant Cab Franc on those bottom two blocks. And I was like, great, let's do it. And so now we make enough Cab Franc that we can make single varietal Cab Franc. One of the other blocks that got replanted probably 2015, 16, something like that, was the very top block on the property because the property is it comes up to like a plateau.
Mhm.
And on top of that plateau is where the Cab Franc is. And it's really like about a half an acre.
Oh, that's it. It's
And
only
so
half.
now we have even more. So now we have Cab Franc, which
It's
is
in my
it's
glass right
literally
now, and
phenomenal.
it's so
I
beautiful.
mean,
For people who don't,
and it's brand new.
I love Cab Franc, and if you've never had, I mean, we talked about Cab Franc from the Loire Valley, but to have Cab Franc from Napa Valley as a single varietal is like a very, very different experience, and it will give you a lot of the things that I think Cabernet Sauvignon gives you, but it's so much more interesting. And not that we don't love Cabernet Sauvignon, but I find that Cabernet Franc gives you like this really unique play of like all the fruit that you want from Cabernet Sauvignon, but then you have like floral stuff on one side that's like very rosy. And then on the other side, you have this like savory, dark, sort of brashy undertone that I love so much. And like it's just sandwiched together. And it's so interesting
Yeah.
and so complex. And what I love is like it's just a little lighter than Cabernet. So I feel like Cabernet Sauvignon. So I feel like I can drink it longer.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I agree with all that. To me, there's like a real femininity to
Mhm.
it, like on the front end,
Mhm.
like initial in your palate. It's really soft and it's a more delicate floral, but like just gentle wine.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm really big on texture. So
Mhm.
for me, the tannins are really plush
Yeah, they're
in
softer for
Cab
sure.
Franc when done right.
Mhm.
And then on the back end, like you said, it's got a little bit more of that. What was the word used? Brash.
Yeah, it's a little brash, a little like underbrush
Yeah,
brash.
brash or even almost like a earthy or
Mhm.
like a
Totally.
finish, like an earth finish. And for me, I mean that's why I love all wine, so I love French wine, and that's very much what I love about French wine is sort of the earthy sort of terroir sort of texture to it. So on the back end, it just like finishes with that, and it's just
Did you grow up with wine on the table? Did your parents drink? Because you know a lot about wine.
never.
This is like all new for you ish.
My parents like never drank alcohol at home. The
Mm,
only time they drank is if they went out, or there was a party,
same.
holidays. It was like beer
Yeah.
vodka, Sprite. I don't know. Like, I remember when I first started racing, back in the States after I lived in England. I lived in England from 16 to 19 racing. I came back and then I got a ride with Bobby Rahal, and then I was, racing all over the place at bigger IndyCar events. And so I had a great sponsor, and they would do dinners all the time. And my parents would sort of be ordering like their vodka whatevers. And I was like, it's just a lot more socially acceptable to just have a glass of wine. Like, just have a glass of wine.
This is you at how old? 19?
I 20 yeah, 21, 22.
Wow.
I started visiting the valley in 2006.
Mhm.
No, that's not true. I mean, I went actually, once upon a time I was married,
Mm.
and I went my bachelorette party was in Napa Valley.
Wow.
I think we literally went to a winery, which is really more of like a cellar door
Yeah.
on 29 that said like best wine ever, like kind of thing.
Okay.
Like,
It's hard to do your bachelorette here now. It's not easy.
is it?
It's hard, yeah, because like, not a lot of people do groups, and then
House rentals are a little weird there too, right? House rentals.
yeah, that too. Yeah, there's not a lot like, that's the thing with Napa is, like, you have to plan coming here, and you have to do it like, you could do it on a whim if you wanted, but it's expensive. There's to your point, there's no, like, VRBOs, there's no Airbnbs, like, there's a few in downtown Napa, but, like, up valley, like in St. Helena, I think there's a cap of like 15 to 20 Airbnb permits. So you really won't find anything up here. So yeah, for like, a group of 10 girls to find a place to stay. Like,
There's some bootleg ones.
oh yeah, there's definitely some bootleg ones.
Do you think that'll change? Do you think the valley will recognize that like, will there be a benefit, or is it actually a benefit to keep it restricted so it keeps it more quiet and private? Like, what is the right answer for the valley?
The only thing it's doing, and I think this goes back to the article that I was talking about earlier, like the only thing it's doing is like screwing the little guy right now. Like the only thing it's doing is taking money out of the pockets of people who like genuinely need it more than ever because one of the other things that happened recently was like Rombauer and Massican just sold. I think Rombauer for different reasons, but Massican, Massican was a small white wine brand that Dan Petrosky, who's been on the podcast before, it was his brand. And like, as I've heard him talk about before, like it's so expensive, as you know, to make wine in Napa Valley, to market it, to do all of these things. And so, Dan basically looked at what he wanted to do. And if you want to scale your business, which it sounds like he wants to do, like the only way to do that is to partner with someone like Gallo. Not the only way, but one of the best ways to do it is to partner with someone like
Yeah.
Gallo and, start to dig into like their economies of scale, which, people don't have. And so if you're a Smith Madrone or a Hoops or Summit Lake, these guys are small. I mean, they've been around for 20, 30 plus years and they don't have the resources. So like,
I mean, you've been to Europe. It's way
that's what I'm
cheaper.
saying.
It's
Like,
way, way, way cheaper. Look, you went to Italy. I was in Italy this summer. I went to Tuscany, Montalcino. I went around,
yes.
and it was way more expensive than anywhere else in Italy. I mean, I was buying like
Well, in Montalcino,
$180
yeah.
bottles of wine, and the reason why is because Americans came in. Americans helped develop that area.
Yeah.
And I was like, that makes sense. But like, here's the thing. I mean, it costs 60 or 70 bucks. I mean, I've probably given away some punchline for people, but like, it costs a lot of money to make a bottle of red wine for me.
Yep.
So I'm not even marking it up. Like, what is it's 185 a bottle.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, like by the time I pay it for employees and do all the things, like
Yeah.
I'm just here to tell you, I don't make any money yet.
Right. No, you're not charging it. You're not charging those prices because you
No.
want to. You're charging those prices because you have to.
Well, I have multiple people that work for me, and they all
Mhm.
have to live in the valley.
Yes.
So like cost of living is
Yeah.
expensive. So their salary is
Right.
expensive, winemakers expensive, employees are
It all
expensive,
factors in.
the land is expensive because there's not that much of it. Like the farmers are expensive, like everything's expensive. And it is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the lower price wine in my portfolio, it does go faster.
Yeah. Well, it also the lower price wine takes significantly less time to make also. Like
Some of
you don't
it, I
have to
mean, the
age
rosé
a
goes quicker.
right, you don't have to age
Yeah,
a Sauvignon Blanc
yeah.
for 4 years in barrel, an expensive new French oak, right? Like it does take a little less time. This, by the way, is this was this the so I know the first wine that well, at least on your website it says like you were inspired by the Illumination Sauvignon Blanc, or you said that
Yeah, that
somewhere.
was it. That
Is
was the
this
wine that
the
I was drinking,
is this the
Quintessa.
inspiration?
I was standing at Quintessa drinking Illumination. It was the first year that they made it. It was Aaron Pott that was the winemaker at that point in time. It was the first stab at it. I still love it to today. I think it's a fantastic white wine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, it just kind of hit my notes. I mean, for me, I love a Sauv Blanc, and our Sauv Blanc has become, a pretty big success these days. People are just
It's
loving it. They're
delicious.
almost surprised they love it. People that don't either like white wine or or just kind of dipping their toes in, they really end up loving the Sauv Blanc right now. And my style of Sauv Blanc is just a little different. I really love my Sauv Blancs to have the weight of a
Yep.
Chardonnay, but the flavor profile of a Sauv Blanc. So, and I'm more in the tropical stone fruit sort of preference area with the flavors versus more of the citrus. So it's got some because it's aged in oak,
Mm-hmm.
so it has the weight from that, which is more like a Chardonnay,
Yep.
but obviously Sauvignon Blanc. So it's kind of that, to me, that perfect marriage between the two.
Yeah, it's a creamier, richer, more textured style of Sauvignon Blanc, but like the key to a Sauvignon Blanc done in this way is like you still have to have freshness and lift, which this definitely still does. So like I'm still loving it. And actually what's interesting is I didn't put this back in the refrigerator, and so it's actually really
Yeah.
close to room temp right now, and it's
Yeah.
still really, really good. And it would not have been it's not Sauvignon Blanc is not a wine that I drink at room temp. It's a wine that I drink cold.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they can be very hot,
Yeah.
they just don't drink right.
No, but
Well, that's good.
it's
That's always a
good.
good sign when you can drink wine. In fact, I just came from Burning Man. Yes, I'm still
I
alive.
saw you made it. I was so worried for you.
It was not that bad. The media made it look so
Really?
much worse than it was. I kept getting texts from people and they were like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "What happened? I Did something happen?" And it's like, "Oh no, it's rain." Like FEMA's getting called in. I'm like, "What?" But I mean, I had, all of my reds, like the whites I could put in the fridge, but I drank wine all except for one night. And now we're talking about the desert, like late nights. Like I didn't drink alcohol all night, but like every night I drank. And only one night I drank tequila. Every single other night I drank wine.
Nice.
And all the reds were just sort of hanging out in the bus in a wine case. They weren't chilled at all. And they were all amazing.
So I have 3 wines total, and for those who are listening, that are part of the podcast wine club, the 3rd wine that I've opened is the it's 2021 classified. I have 2 wait, is this I have 3 2021s in my glass right now. So if you're part of the wine club, you have the 2021 classified, which I also have in my glass right now. And this is an NDA wine. So we were talking earlier about, you don't necessarily have to like own your own vineyards or, you know, have all the fancy things. Like you can have, there's lots of different ways to do this. So this is like considered an NDA wine, which is fruit that or wine that came from a source that cannot be disclosed.
What does that mean?
So, okay, so for example, let's say like Julian was doing, I'm not saying you do this, but let's say like Julian was doing a blending trial, right? And he decided that he wanted like 3 barrels of this, or he wanted like 70% this and like 30% of something else. And so when you did that math, there was like maybe 2 barrels left over, like a barrel or something left over. So what some wineries will do is like they'll sell that barrel or they'll sell bottled wine as long to like, places like Wine Access, as long as they don't disclose the source. And so it actually happens a lot in Napa Valley. It's not only for that reason. Sometimes it's a cash flow thing. Sometimes, it's a space thing, like they don't have enough space for it. And so, people will buy either the barrels full of the juice or they'll actually like buy shiners and then it gets relabeled. So that's like an NDA wine or private label or white labeled wine. And so that's what this is. And so you can get like, really good value that way because a lot of times when people do this, they're
Yeah.
selling it for pennies on the dollar, right? They're selling it to just like make money quickly or move space or do whatever they're trying to do. And so that's what this wine
Cool.
is here. And so like you can disclose a little bit about the wine, but you can't disclose a lot. And so the one thing they were able to disclose about this wine is that it comes from the Rodeo Drive of Napa Valley, which if you've ever been to Napa or read anything about Napa, you know that is a little place that's technically not an AVA called Bridger Hill. Um, which is where like all the, a bunch of fancy wineries live. But
And then also the other super plush areas down on the valley floor, though. That's like
yes.
actually not that far from there. That's on the valley floor. That's sort of your Screaming Eagle region. That's
Oakville
like
Cross.
what would that be called? Is that Yountville or is
That's Oakville proper, and that is
Oakville?
that is the crown jewels of Napa that live in that
Yeah,
area. So yeah, you've
yeah,
got
yeah.
everything from Screaming Eagle, Dalla Valle, Rudd.
Is that like Beckstoffer too? Is that like Beckstoffer?
So Andy Beckstoffer owns a bunch of vineyards. He doesn't have anything on that side of Oakville, but on the other side of Oakville, they have the Beckstoffer Tokelan vineyard, which is like,
Yeah,
probably yeah.
Tokelon.
So Tokelan's probably like the most heralded vineyard in Napa Valley in terms of like,
Because the Alpha Omega gets sources a lot of grapes, and
yes.
they use the vineyard name as the for it and the Tokelon.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you know this, but like in order to use that name, so there's like if you've ever bought grapes from Andy Beckstoffer, you'll know this. He takes a percentage of
Mhm.
what you sell the bottle for. So that's how much the
Yeah.
grapes
Hey,
cost.
man, it's like naming rights. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like it makes sense to
Yeah.
me.
So like, if you want to charge $500 a bottle for your wine, that's great. But Andy Beckstoffer gets a cut of that in order to put the name of the grapes on that. So that's how he works. Yes, the Tokelan Vineyard is on the western side, so that's like the Mondavi area. Across the street from that is Opus One, and then kind of in that
Yeah.
middle area there, you've got a whole bunch of like really incredible wineries as well.
Yeah.
Everything from like Groth, which was the first 100-point wine in Napa Valley in '85. Rudd Estate,
Was it? Oh, wow.
Groth, yeah, the 1985 Groth Reserve is the very first 100-point wine. After that, it was, Screaming Eagle and Dalla Valle Screaming Eagle was rated up, but Dalla Valle Maya and Screaming Eagle both made by Heidi Barrett.
Hang on. I have to tell you then. The reason okay, this is why I make Cab Franc now.
Okay.
So, uh, David Abreu,
Mhm.
who's a
Very famous viticulturist.
farmer in the
Yep,
valley,
very fancy farmer.
very, very, very famous for his farming, and he also makes his own wine too. He's had like at least when last point I knew, he had 8 100-point wines of his
That
own.
sounds right, yeah.
Never mind how many he farmed for. But his son Rico
Yes, he's a
is a
driver.
sprint car driver.
That's right.
And so I was dating a driver at that point. We were really good friends with all them. And so we went early to Napa Valley before our race in Sonoma and stayed and hung out. Stayed at Meadowood and just had a great time. Although Calistoga Ranch was my favorite until it burned down.
It was so good.
And we went around with David for a couple of days, and we were up at Della Valle, and David turns to me because I love the Maya, and
Mm.
he was the one. He goes, "Do you realize you love Cab Franc?" And I was like,
I don't know.
and so then I had the difficult conversation with my winemaker where I was like, "Can we replant some maybe like Cab Franc? Would there be a good place for it?" And that's where the top block got turned over from Cabernet into Cab
Oh,
Franc back in like 15, 16 years. And so that's what we're drinking. And now the bottom blocks are Cab Franc as well. So it was David Abreu that told me, "You love Cab
that's
Franc."
right.
And it was because of Dalla Valle Maya.
Yes, because it's a Cabernet Franc dominant wine and a beautiful
There you
probably
go.
the most beautiful, like, old school example of Cabernet Franc being done in Napa Valley for, like, 30 years now. You're seeing a lot more Cabernet Franc kind of, you know, pop up in the valley, and it's also you're seeing a lot more expensive Cabernet Franc. So I think at one point, Cabernet Franc was the most expensive grape, like, in terms of raw materials. It was, like, I think the average price per ton was, like, 9 or 10,000, which was like over $1,000 more than what Cabernet Sauvignon was going for. I mean, it's definitely skewed because of some of those grapes were coming from the Tokelan vineyard. But if you look at who's producing Cabernet Franc in the valley, you're in very good company because there is all of the top producers have now started at least considering bottling or a small bottling a little bit of Cabernet Franc. So it's definitely going to be a huge trend in Napa. So if you're visiting Napa and people are tasting the Cabernet Franc, I think that's for me the one to watch in Napa is Cabernet Franc, and it has been for a while. And there's some great examples of it, present company included.
Can we talk about Chenin Blanc? Because after going to South Africa,
Yeah,
I would just love to make a Chenin Blanc because Chenin Blanc was my favorite.
Chenin Blanc used to be a huge thing here.
It
Oh
did?
my God,
What happened?
Yeah, so Chenin Blanc was huge for a really long time in the valley.
Damn it.
All the way until like the 80s, 90s. And then a lot of it got replanted. But yeah, like in the 60s, you saw a lot of Chenin, and there's still some great Chenin vineyards. In fact, if you know the Mondavi sisters, um, on the Peter Mondavi side, so the Charles Krug side, Angelina Mondavi, she and her sisters make one from in the Aloft label that's beautiful. Super, super like
Damn, I want some of that.
it's really, really
A
good. A
loft?
loft, yep.
Oh, I'm gonna ask Tracy for that.
Yeah, she'll know.
Chenin
And
Blanc, a
it's a
loft. I
beautiful
think because she's friends with them,
I'm
so,
sure. Yeah, they're so great.
yeah.
They make their wine up at Brasswood. Another, they do custom crush up there. Although Angelina kind of oversees that whole thing. But yeah, I think if you're in, if so you tasted Chenin Blanc in South Africa and got excited.
Went to South Africa in, like, 2008 for vacation, and I every vacation had a wine tasting aspect, like, part to it.
Mhm.
So it was, like, wine tasting in Franschhoek, and then it was safari in Kruger.
Mm.
That was kind of the gist of it, and then finish off in Cape Town and go home. And so we somehow got hooked up with Andy Erickson because him and a guy, they started a winery in South Africa.
Andy
And
Erickson
we
did?
went there pretty damn sure.
It wouldn't surprise me, but I had not heard that. That's kind of cool.
It was totally Andy Erickson. I just like looked him up because I
Yeah.
was like, let me not be an idiot. And it was totally him.
That's so cool. Andy does a lot, so it doesn't surprise me, but he's also like I mean, he's an incredibly talented winemaker. I'd be very curious to see what he does in South Africa. That would be cool to see.
Well, look, Pinotage
It
sucks.
does suck.
So minus Pinotage. Have you been I mean, like, have you been to South Africa or have
I
you tasted much
haven't. I
Pinotage?
haven't, but I have the Pinotage I've tasted can stay in South Africa. I am not a fan. I can get behind the Chenin Blanc, and I can get there's some great Chardonnay. There's Compensa's Chardonnay that I really like from there. But
Hmm,
yeah, I've not loved the reds, specifically the Pinotage
yeah,
coming out of South Africa. I don't know. Like there's very few wine regions that I won't drink from, and there's very few things that I won't drink. And I'm consistently surprised every time I go out to restaurants. And I think like you, like I've traveled to so many different wine regions in the last few years, and my eyes have been open to a lot of different wines that I have not traditionally been a fan of. Like Tuscany, for example, not my first choice of wine region to drink from. However, after I've been there 3 times in the last 3 years, I love Tuscan wines. Like I can't get enough of Chianti, Brunello di Montalcino, Rosso di Montalcino. Like I'm all day for Tuscan wines, and I think part of it has to do with understanding how they can play a role with food and how they can play a role in like with your life. And I think once you like live and breathe that to a certain degree, it starts to make sense. So I fall in love with those.
I have a question
Mhm.
because I love taking trips based on wine. Name 1 or, like, your top 3 places to go for wine tasting and experience. Like, this doesn't
Mm,
need to be you know what I mean? Like, because it's a whole thing. Like, if I'm
yeah.
taking a trip, like, where do I go? Because it's more than just the wine, right? So give me a couple of ideas.
Mendoza is like way at the top.
Mm,
It is such a cool place. And I mean, like you're literally surrounded by the Andes Mountains, which is breathtaking at any time of year. And then like it's also still like dirt roads. So it's very rustic, but then you get to some of these places and they have like restaurants, hotels, and like in a like not in a cheesy way, like in a really cool way. So I love Mendoza. I think it's really, really cool. Um, honestly, Chianti Classico in Tuscany, like I think that's one of the coolest, most beautiful places. And like there's a lot of different experiences that you can have there, especially if you go like the agriturismo route or if you go to a winery that you know has like a food pairing situation. And then after that, there's some if you go to the right bank of Bordeaux, there's some really cool places on the right bank of Bordeaux. There's some really cool places there that I would happily go revisit, but there's so many places that I haven't been. So that's the on the experience side, because I consider that a lot. Like, I'm thinking about, like, the whole thing and, like, what other cities
yeah.
am I gonna visit when I'm there? Like, what's
Accommodation,
the food
cities,
situation?
ambiance, view, food, yeah, all of it. Mendoza, Chianti region, and, what was the last one?
Bordeaux.
Bordeaux.
Yeah, very,
Right bank,
very
Bordeaux.
classic, very old school, but if you stick to, like, the right bank and outside of the left bank, I think you'll have a little bit more fun in terms of experiences because it's a little bit more, like, laissez-faire. What about you? 3 places for experiences, where are you going?
New Zealand,
I have not done.
Queenstown.
Okay.
I mean, that whole area is so great. The
Good
food is
food?
amazing. Oh, the food is amazing. It's so fun. The wine's great. The people are hilarious. They have such a fantastic sense of
Mm.
humor. So I'd say Queenstown area for wine tasting in New Zealand. I would say, I mean, Franschhoek was amazing. It was so stunning. I was surprised how beautiful it
Mm,
was. Like, I expected it to be some barren desert, but it was just these green, lush vineyards
really?
and then these mountains and like cliffy mountains. And it was so stunning. And the food is so unique
Mm,
and different and wonderful. Like, lots of like deer meat, like,
mm,
venison style meat. So I really loved that. It's impossible for me to not include Napa
sure.
Valley. I mean, it's in there. It should always be in there. It's the best food. It's phenomenal wine. That if I had to pick one other, I don't think I've been there. I haven't done enough to like be
Mm.
wowed. I mean, I was really like Italy was cool and Tuscany was cool, but
Don't you go to, like, Monaco for, like, racing or something? Doesn't that
I did. I didn't go for the races because so Monaco's the same day as the Indy 500 and the Coke 600,
Oh,
and so I
okay.
was always working them. And then as soon as I retired, I've been doing the Indy 500 broadcasting since
Oh,
then. So I'm always busy. The only year I could have done Monaco and the Indy 500 for broadcasting was COVID. So
oh,
I was not able to do that, but Monaco, I did go there for a week this summer. Loved it.
beautiful. What's not to love? It's like,
Loved it.
Napa Valley in south of
I went and
France.
saw a horse show at Port Hercules. Like, it was the
Oh,
most
that's very
stunning
cool.
backdrop ever.
That's very cool. Where do you eat when you're in Napa? Like, do you have a routine when you come back here? Like, do you have, like, a coffee spot?
Charter Oak,
Charter Oak, obviously, which is where I just was.
Charter Oak.
Yes.
If there's new people, French Laundry. I mean, if there are people that have not been, then we do that.
Yeah. It's a must. I
I
mean, for
probably
people
wouldn't.
who are like, "Should we go? Should we not?" I think French Laundry
Yeah,
is outstanding, and it is expensive, and, like,
yeah,
it will be memorable, and they will ensure that you have the best time ever. Like, that level of
yeah.
hospitality is incredible.
The hospitality is amazing. I, however, had a phenomenal time at Silver or a Single Thread.
Oh, good. In
Um,
Healdsburg.
Loved Single Thread. It's just a drive,
Yeah.
if you're staying in the valley, it's a bit of a
Yeah.
drive, but Single Thread was
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Another 3 Michelin.
What else do I love in the valley? In St. Helena, there's a little coffee shop, right, in the main part. It's not right on the main road, it's just off the
Yeah,
main
Napa Valley
road.
Coffee Roasters. You gotta go to Station. That's where everybody hangs out. You're not too far. You gotta go a little further south, where like, that gas station, that's the place to get coffee in Napa, is Station.
I mean, Taylor's, like, you gotta go to
Well, yeah,
Taylor's
Gott's. Well, so Joel
or
Gott,
Gott's,
well,
whatever.
so Joel Gott, who owns Taylor's, Gott's, whatever, he owns Station. So, like, it's the same, and they do all their own pastries and their coffee. But if you wanna go see a
Mm.
winemaker in Napa Valley, go to Station at, like, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. Like, it's where everybody, like, gasses up to get their coffee. There's seating out there. It's the best. I'm there, like, every day.
Do they do espresso martinis late at night then too?
They don't, and I don't know anywhere that does an espresso martini around here, actually, except for probably the.
Are you shitting me?
No, I don't know. I've, chartered.
That's a
I know.
crime.
I love an espresso martini, and in fact, when I went to the Kentucky Derby this year, and we were sitting in, like, we had this, like, steakhouse, seating situation, and at, like, 4 PM before the race, I was like, "I need an espresso martini." And so I ordered one from the bar, and, like, the whole place started ordering them after, and,
They're the best.
all the people that I was with, they had never had one before, and I was like, "They're the most delicious thing that you'll ever have." Like, you really can
And they're
only.
so
They're so
simple. Like, they're
simple.
clean, simple,
Yeah.
they're not like a big sugar bomb. It's like liquor,
Well, they
coffee, and a
can
little bit of
be,
something
depending
else.
on who's making them. But yes,
I
they're
sometimes have it made with tequila even.
yeah, you know what? I just had one made with tequila and I loved it. I love a Negroni, I love an espresso martini. If I'm not drinking wine,
Oh, Negroni, no,
can't do
no,
the
we
Negroni,
can't. No,
not can't
can't.
do the
We
bitter.
can't. No. They're just like they taste so sweet and weird.
Oh,
They
who's
taste
making
like
them for
fake
you?
sugar or something. They're terrible.
Oh, weird.
Terrible.
No, I like Campari. But it has to be the good gin and the good vermouth and Campari. Like, you can't, you don't order
I'm a
that.
wine girl.
I love
Like, I don't
that.
I mean, like, it's no bullshit. Like, I drink wine. Like, I rarely drink anything else. Sometimes I'll drink some tequila, maybe vodka, but for the most part, I almost always drink wine. I mean, keeping in mind, I was at Burning Man and I drank wine.
That's true. I don't do the cocktails a lot, but when I do, I make them count. But I'm a wine person. It makes me I feel better on wine. I prefer wine. I think wine's more interesting. I can drink it slower and I can drink it with food, which is the most important part. The only advice I'd always give to people when they come to Napa is like I said, plan, hire a driver if you're gonna be drinking. Like don't try to like you're here in Napa to drink wine. If you go to Del Dado, just expect that you're gonna be wasted after, but other places not so
Oh,
much.
really?
Well, Del
I
Dado
should plan that.
has always had a bit of a reputation for getting people drunk in the valley, which is kind of their jam, but they're also
You see
very
my
fun.
friend Barrett Alpha Omega, same thing.
Same thing. Yes. They help you revisit the wines a lot. That's their MO. Would you like to retaste this? Would you like to revisit that? That's
Would
like
you like to revisit
yeah.
that? Is there anything that you like that you wanna
Yeah,
revisit?
that's the classy way to ask for more wine. If y'all don't know that, that's the like universal I would like more of that is, "May I revisit the Sauvignon Blanc?"
It's basically code for, "I'm not sure I wanna buy it, but could you please convince me a little bit more?"
Exactly. So if you're tasting your in person, you pour a little more and then you slide that little sheet that you fill out a little closer to them and make sure the pen is pointing towards so what you exactly they can fill it out.
Here's the way I do it. I don't know if it's the right way, but when I go wine tasting, I buy a case. That's my deal. Like, I'm going to places that are amazing and they don't there's no charge. So here's the deal. I buy a case. Like, I put together a great case. So if you're getting a free tasting, if somebody's calling it in, if you're going somewhere nice, just put a case together.
Yeah. The wine's not gonna go to waste. You're gonna find
At least a half a
yeah.
case. Like,
I love that. I think the people of Napa Valley will
that's
appreciate that advice.
that's the price of
Yeah.
admission.
No, definitely plan on buying wine here. That's the whole point of you coming to Napa. Also, like, when you get home and you have all of those wines, like, you're not gonna be mad that you have those wines. It's just, like,
No.
they're gonna show up and be like, "Oh, like, what a great souvenir that we purchased in Napa Valley. Yay us."
And start upgrading your daily drinkers, man.
That's right. Yeah, that wine
Life is way too short to drink bad wine.
you know, I'll wrap it up with a story that's, like, sort of not a Debbie Downer, but it's a silver lining story. So when I was working at press, Leslie Rudd, who is a billionaire, he owned the restaurant and he owned Rudd, and he always had a stash of wines in the cellar. And he'd come in from time to time and he'd say, grab me one of my wines from my cellar. And so one night he was with like two friends. It was like a Wednesday or something. I brought him a wine and he had great wines back there, but he also had some of his own wines. And so one night I grabbed him. He had a couple of like first growth Bordeaux. So I brought him a first growth Bordeaux and it was like a Chateau Margaux or something. And I said, here you go. And he said, oh, said, I can't have that wine. It's a Wednesday night. I'm here with my friends. I can't have that wine. I said, really? And he said, yeah. He said, bring me something like less expensive. He's like, I don't want to drink something that fancy. So I brought him something less expensive, wasn't that fancy. And a month later, he died. And I went back in that cellar and I looked at that bottle of wine and I cried. And I went, how sad is that?
I would
That he he didn't drink the wine that he had, like this special bottle that he clearly had for some reason. He never got to drink. You can't take it to the grave. He never got to drink it. He could have enjoyed it with his friends that night, but he chose not to. And it was such a good reminder at that point for me to just be like, just drink the wine. Like, tomorrow is not guaranteed. We don't know if you're ever going to get to pull that cork. So if you have the opportunity to
That's a great story.
pull the cork.
That's a fucking great
Yeah.
story. Honestly, like, if that doesn't say seize the moment, I mean, if you need any more proof, watch Sideways, right? Like, watch the old movie Sideways, and you'll realize that instead of the night to pick the wine, make the wine make the night.
Yes.
Like, go like, "Tonight I'm opening up that Cab Franc, like, I've been waiting for," like, who cares? Like, it's a Tuesday, it doesn't matter, like, tonight's gonna be awesome because this is what I'm
Yeah.
opening. It's like, just do it.
Just open the
You'll
wine.
always get more. You'll just always get more.
It'll come around when it's supposed to, and you'll come back to Napa and you'll get more. You can always reorder on the website. Like it I don't know. I'm so glad that I'm sad for him and I'm sad for that moment, but I'm so glad that I got to learn that a little earlier into my wine drinking career because it has like motivated me to open the great bottles and we've had some pretty epic wine tonight, which I'm not, it's a Friday night, like not that it needed
Oh,
to be Friday,
cheers.
but
Wait, hang on, I just pour a little splash because we've done it tonight. Cheers. Here's to
cheers.
fantastic conversation about wine.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your sharing your expertise, your stories. Wow, and just for promoting wine and just there's just such a, I don't know, it's like a really, really fun little hobby, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hobby,
Mm-hmm.
passion, and there's just so much integrity to it. And once people actually get out to vineyards, what you end up realizing is that it's not just something that is made by the million in bulk. It's every single varietal is different, every year is different, it's always different, and
Yep.
you'll never get more of
Yep.
it. And it's very special, and a lot of labor goes into it, and a lot of love goes into it. A lot of millions of dollars goes into it, and people care. And I think that's what you end up tasting. So,
I think so
cheers.
too. I taste it in the glass. And I'm so grateful that you took the time to do this. I know you are very busy with all of your activities. You have your own podcast called Pretty Intense that people can check out. The wine, of course, is called Somnium. You also have a candle company that I just learned
Hang on,
about.
I burned it. It's like, can you see the flame? It's right there.
Oh, yeah. And it's in a really, really pretty stemless wine glass. So it's
It's
sustainable.
actually in a wine. Don't mind my pajama shorts,
Mm-mm.
okay? It's a podcast. That's what we get to do.
Never would have known.
Stop judging. Don't be jealous if you're in an office. Yeah, that logo right there. It's an eye. Voyant means the seer, and so they're in wine glasses. So when you're done, you just wash it,
I love that.
and you have a wine
I
glass.
love it. I feel like so many times I've tried to save my like candle holders and then I'm like, well, what am I going to do with this? This is useless. It's pretty and does nothing else. But that you can actually drink wine out of, which I love. So we can find you in all the places. We'll obviously link everything below. For those of you who are enjoying the wine with us tonight, from the podcast, it was the 2021 classified. And if you want to enjoy the Somnium wines that we talked about, we have the Cabernet Franc, we had the Sauvignon Blanc, and did you have something else? Did you have rosé or no? Yeah,
Yeah.
you had
Oh yeah.
rosé. You had the
Yep.
Somnium rosé. So you can find all of those on the Somnium website
And then we also have,
and the Napa Valley.
yes,
Yeah,
we
there's
did
so
the
many great
blend.
wines.
It's still a Cabernet, but we purchase a little bit of
Great.
Merlot,
Oh, we love
and it's a
Merlot.
little bit more balanced and ready to drink instead of having to age it at all.
And then, of course, if you're in Napa Valley, you have a beautiful new tasting room up in Calistoga that you should definitely go check out.
That's right. My friends were just there from LA, and they FaceTime me actually when I was supposed to be starting this podcast. And I was like, well, I'm supposed to be doing a podcast, look at all this wine, but the Wi Fi is out. So my phone still worked, but the Wi Fi did not. So anyway, she's like, it's beautiful. And they just had such a good time. The girls did such a good job.
Yeah.
Natalie and Tracy do an amazing job entertaining people. So please come see us and do a tasting and really see the space and get a feel for
Yeah.
Sauvignon.
And it's such a cute little town as well. So if you're in Napa Valley, go check it out. Danica, thank you so much. It's been a true pleasure. I'm so glad that we finally got to do this. And I hope to see you when you're back in the Valley.
Thank you.